in skinnier strips.
Oh.
And that is a really cool impact, but
Yeah.
not to do, here and there maybe.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
maybe. Who
Yeah.
knows?
But then I ended up being like, oh, that sounds like a big, like 12 by 12.
Yeah, they end up big. I like them.
And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, I'll just like quickly quilt this and make it into something.
Yeah.
And then I totally ruined it.
Oh.
Just threw it out. I tried to stitch in the ditch and it just like, it was just terrible.
You know what a friend of mine did with hers? She found the design online. It was so cool. I don't know how to describe it. I'll see if I can draw it. So, how are we on time? Oh, we're ready. Okay, ready to go live. So, question about quilting a log cabin. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go around and say this is kind of what it is. Okay. So you have the idea, center, and you build around and you build around. So there's strips all through here.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did was she drew a line, erasable one, across here, and then sewed from here to here. She must have marked. It must have gone through. Yeah, she must have gone here to here, and then here, and then here to here, and then came out to the next layer, and then came out to the next layer, and so she had this really cool lantern kind of design.
But you don't have to follow.
But you don't.
Stay on a line.
No,
you
you
still have to sew straighter
don't.
than I do.
Yeah, she's amazing. That's my friend Jackie.
So, like, I feel like I can do like the piecing and get the quilt top and be like, yes, this is it. And then I go to like quilt it and I'm like, throw it out.
Oh, I don't want that.
I know, but
We're
it's
gonna
like
have to
worst
figure
part of it.
something out.
I know.
So I would say that online or in person's probably gonna be better. Look for classes for free motion quilting and take a class.
Okay.
Because, since I have the long arm, I am not kidding. I put pot holders on my 14-foot machine.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier.
Well, I know Venus teaches you how to use a long arm over at her place. But
Yeah, and there are some for rent,
Yeah.
so you can do that. Oh, I just remembered I had to
Deer
click
Country
in.
Quilting in Sealy,
Mm.
they
Yeah.
offer a 2-day free
Oh.
free motion.
Nice.
It's 6 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Here's things that we worked on.
Oh my gosh.
She showed us how to do all kinds of things. It was quite amazing.
Is it Terry?
Teresa.
Teresa, okay.
Teresa. Yeah.
Oh.
I just thoroughly loved it. Haven't done anything with it yet, but
Cool. Yeah.
Well, fun. Well, can you show and tell you're not? So I'm excited. I'm hearing all kinds of steps toward confidence and independence. The lover's knot.
It's gonna be like
Yeah.
a pillowcase,
Yeah.
a random
Cute.
Yeah. A little fun thing about making a pillow cover. If you put the other side to it, but wrong sides together, and then you bind
what I
around
was
the
thinking of.
outside edge like you bind a quilt, it gives this really nice rigid edge to the pillow. And for like a couch pillow, not a bed pillow, of
right.
course, but
it's a great idea.
yeah, and it's easy and it
Like piping.
yeah.
It
Oh
looks like
yeah, and
piping.
it looks like piping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, someday we have a class coming up. I can't remember when, but I want to show you all the trick that I just recently learned from a friend, Rachel, who you make your binding in 2 strips, so you have it sewn down the seam of 2 strips for the whole binding. And the way you put it on and fold it over, it looks like it has an additional trim. So like a little piping strip in between the quilt and the binding. Oh, it's so cool. Anyway, that's another class. So today we're here for strips and strings, and strips and strings are so much fun that my effort to try to organize what to teach today was like, but I have to, and I have to tell them this. So here's a handout for y'all to have. And right now we only have 3 of you. So I meant to grab one, but I forgot. Thank you. Okay. Okay, here we are. I do have 3 copies of the pictures I printed out. So you guys are welcome. Oh no, we have 4. Oh, well, we can figure out whether you want to or not, or maybe there's one you want for sure. Yeah. Take a picture from your phone. I don't care. But so you may want to look at those in reference. But just the pictures that I took are from photos that I have in my files and photos from Pinterest. And so I was going to post in the chat that if you search my Pinterest account, it will, and if you go to Quilted Projects, you can look at anything if you want, but Quilted Projects, then under Quilted Projects, there are several files that will be applicable today. One is scraps, one is strips and strings, and one is crumbs, and one is improv. And so I think there's probably others too, but those will have the most applicable ideas to today's lesson. So today we're going to talk about what's strips and strings. So strips, I don't know that there's a technical definition, but my definition is strips are strips that you cut, that you have, or jelly rolls that you buy, and they're manageable width. Strings are often referred to from scraps, true scraps, that are truly the edges of something, so they're often quite skinny. Because of the class we did a year or so ago, the block of the month, we had a lot of blocks that needed pretty skinny strips. And so I did start noticing that when I cut pieces for another quilt pattern and I had yardage, I'd have an inch left over, an inch and a half left over. Like, what am I going to do with this? I now have a bag and a box, a bag for 1.5 inch strips and a box for 1 inch. Are they precise? No, they are not. They're close enough. And so I would call those strings because they're hanging around. I have cut them the right, kind of sort of the right width, but totally, the term strips and the term strings is often interchanged. So just so you know that. So one of the best things about making strip string quilts is that it helps reduce your scrap stash. I have 3, count them, laundry baskets heaping full of scraps in my fabric, in my quilt room. And then also have little, 4-inch pieces of full width yardage in my stacks of fabric. So all of those are going to make terrific string quilts. And so what do you do when you have like a 4-inch piece and a 12-inch piece and a 45-inch piece? You just sew them together. You start putting little pieces together to make a longer strip if you want. That's one way. Or you take your long strip and you sew a short piece, and then add another short piece, and then add another short piece, the same length, not necessarily, and then just cut in between them, and then you have 2 strips now sewn together. And that's the whole thing with strips and strings. It's about creating your own fabric in a way. And so the quilting rib joke is that, what are quilters? Well, they take perfectly beautiful fabric, cut it into little pieces, sew them back together, maybe cut them again, especially if you really like disappearing blocks. That's another topic. And sew them back together. And that's really what we're doing. So we're using our strips and strings to create a larger piece that then gets cut. How it gets cut is up to you. It's up to you and your decision about what kind of quilt you want to make. So you can cut them into various widths, and if you are one of these amazing, all the respect in the world comes from me, if you are organized and you want to use your leftovers from a project and decide, okay, I've got a 4-inch swath here. I could cut a 2-inch, a 1-inch, and another 1-inch. I could cut a 1.5 and a 3.5, and then have bins or boxes or whatever you want where you throw the same width together, and or color divide them too. Do I do this? No, I don't. And so I certainly don't want anyone to go wacky about, well, she said I had to put them all in order and da-da-da-da-da. No, don't. Just be spontaneous and have fun. That's always my #1 rule. So then in strip and string quilts, you either are creating a swath or a slab. I've called it a strip slab, where you're sewing a bunch of strips together, and you're making a big old piece of fabric, basically, new fabric, and then you're cutting whatever it is you're going to cut. We'll talk more about all this. Or you are using a piece of fabric, whether it's muslin or whether it's actually a really pretty fabric or color. That again is dependent on what quilt you're making. But you use that piece of fabric to guide you to sew the strips onto it. That's called foundation piecing, and I'll give you an example of that. And foundation piecing then has the actual piece you want to use, so you use that to cut out and cut off the little extra strips. So, so either by making a slab and cutting the size you want out of things, or by using a foundation, and it could be paper, it could be fabric. In the grandmother's day, newspaper was used, and in fact in a lot of old string quilts, if they're worn out and people are peeking under that fabric to see what's there, there'll be newspaper articles from that day. So it's a really cool way to date a quilt. Phone book pages, if anyone remembers that. Those are wonderful because they're real thin and they give you the framework to sew your strips to, but they either dissolve off almost when it's washed, or you can tear it off easily. So that's another resource. So really, that's the method. That's it. So let me show you a couple and go through some things. So how would we start? Well, let's start with 2 strips. So we can take our width of fabric and cut and sew 2 strips together. So you have a 45-inch strip and a 45-inch strip, or if this happens to be scraps from my scrap bin, I'm going to decide how long I need, and I'll have my strips sewn together, and I'll probably trim off some. I actually throw stuff away. I know. Anyway, so then you can see it. The width of your strip isn't anything prescribed except by what size you want to make your block, what size you want to make your quilt. The bigger your pieces, the faster your quilt goes. The smaller your pieces, though, really the prettier it is, I have to admit. So here is just a simple 2-rail fence, or a plus it's sometimes called. And all it is this piece here, 2 skinny strips sewn together and then cut into the quarter of the block and sewn together in a plus. So you have 1 piece, 1 piece, 1 piece, 1 piece, and they just turn another quarter turn, okay? So that's 2 strips, yay. Now, you can go to 3 strips, and then you have more what's oh, here, I'm sorry, let me start over here. I did have strips here. So this is where it starts, 2 strips. And then I just measure on my cutting board and ruler and chop up these little sections so they're the size. If you're making the plus block, you're going to cut them the length that it is across, because we're always dealing with squares. So whatever length, width it is across the 2 strips sewn together, that's going to be your length that you cut. Okay? So when you take a big strip like this first you're going to chop off one end to square it off. And that's always your first step. Then you start measuring and cutting your little pieces, and then you can set them down just by turning them around. I don't think I have enough of some little pieces here, but let me just show you. Now, where did it go? Went under my computer. Here it is. And I'm even going to fold this in half because the one seam isn't so thick that it's overwhelming to work with. And the cool thing about strips and strings is, folks, it is not precision sewing. We are not talking precision. I mean, precision's always, I don't ever want someone to think they shouldn't do that. It's always going to make a better quilt the more precise you are. So I'm going to set my ruler down with a line that follows the seam. That's going to keep my cut more square. And then, without cutting through the cord I'm talking through, I will cut that little end off, toss it away, Eleanor Burns style. And for those of you quilting that long, this is 3 inches across. So I'm going to measure, this won't be big enough. I need my other ruler, sorry.
Are you squaring it up on your board too, or are you?
No, I don't use my board for squaring because it's too hard to follow. It's not as accurate as a ruler. It's not as accurate. So now I take my ruler and I have my 1, 2, 3, because I'm right-handed. So I have my 1, 2, 3 in this direction. And I can, because it's going to be 3, I can go 12 because it's divided by 3. Then move it to 9. And every once in a while I want to peek through and make sure a single line is running along that seam pretty smoothly. Boom. And boom. Okay. Now I have all these, and I'd keep going. Now I have all these pieces. Now here's a trick to 2 strip windmills or pinwheels or pluses or whatever you want to call them. So as you set them down and you get yourself, okay, I'm here. I'm going to look at my model or my pattern if I haven't made one yet. It's always a good idea when you're making a quilt to make 1 block. And just make sure it goes together the way you think it's supposed to. Do I always do that? No. But anyway, but it is a good idea. And when I have done that, I have actually benefited. I've learned something that, will make it easier. So I have my block. Another thing is, if you have your block made, set it down, put these on top of it, and make sure you are turning it the right way. Because let's say I make this one let me say, okay, let's go this. Let's say I make it right. It is in fact a spinning windmill block and it's going fine. But this one turns, I don't know if the camera can see that, but this one turns the opposite way. So it's not going to look right. So you want to make sure you have them going the same direction. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So then we'll do it correctly here and here. And all you're doing is taking this piece, turning a quarter turn to the right, turning a quarter turn to the right, turning a quarter turn to the right. That's all you're doing, or to the left if you choose to go that way. Then you stack your next set. And let's say you have 10 sets of these. You stack them up, then you bring that to your sewing machine, and we've talked about chain sewing. So you're going to sew these two together, these two together. Then you go to the next one, sew the next two together and the next two together, and they're all hooked together with a little chain of sewing thread from your machine. Then cut them apart in 4s, and then you sew the other seam together, and again chain. So you get to do a whole bunch of them at once, and it makes it really fast. Does that make sense? Okay. If you need any suggestions on chain sewing, we can address that. I think that's been demonstrated in another class earlier. So we have that. So then, like I said, you can make your strips as wide as you want. But when you cut those, hey, come on in. When you cut those, they're going to be wider because they're going to be longer because they're also wider. So whatever measurement this is, that's going to be your cut. All right. Now, 3 strips. So 3 strips can be random color choice. Random color choice. You will notice this is truly scrappy, and these colors would not be something I'd plan to put together in a quilt. But when they're all put together, it's our world. Nobody said, oh, that tree leaf is too green. Let's move a different tree over there. Well, some people do that. I realize they do exist. I don't know them. I don't think I even would want to, but maybe. So I'm just showing you here. Now, this was made strip piecing and cutting 2 apart because I had plenty and I did that. So I'll have more blocks of this. But I'm just going through my scraps and I'm sewing these together. These strips are all the same width. They don't have to be. They can be different widths. They can be skinny on the outside and wide in the middle to showcase a really cool fabric that has a bigger print maybe. They can be skinny in the middle and wide on the outsides. Whatever width they are of those 3 or more strips, that's the length you will cut, because then you have a square. And what happens with a rail fence is the same thing that happened with that plus, only you can, I'll try and do it here. Need a design wall, darn it. Okay. So I'm just going to put these, you just go perpendicular is the classic rail fence. I'm going to say if you have a better way to do it, do it. Now look at that. Oh my gosh, I'm probably a 1/4 inch off. Okay, that's fine. Stretch it. It will be fine. I'm going to say I'm going to move this over here only because it's similar to this. It's not similar to that. And then it spreads the colors out a little. And then you just make your whole quilt by putting all these together. However big a quilt you need. May not put wine glasses in a baby quilt, but just saying. Maybe that's been the parents' survival.
I have a question about the stretching part that you just said. So you're going to try to make the smaller piece the same size as the big piece as opposed to the big piece
It's both.
size.
It's both. So let me just, okay. So I'm going to set these, they're going to be perpendicular, and I'm going to set this, it is 1/4 inch off. Now, honestly, I pulled this out of a box, and so I may have, this may actually be smaller, but anyway, I would make this work, and I would pull it to the end, and I don't pin. I don't like pins, but you can. If you like pins, use pins. And look what can happen when I pull it nice and snug. It's pretty close. And really, even if at the end it's still 1/8 of an inch off, that's going to be okay when the other seam goes across this way. It'll take that in. And do you want your whole quilt to be sloppy and messy like that? No, it'll probably fall apart and not be the best option. But now and then, give yourself some slack. It's okay. And so that larger piece will buckle a little bit, but that's okay. If you use your stitch ripper, or if you love a stiletto, you can sew with the bigger one on top, if that happens to be the way the quilt lines up. And then you get these two to match at the bottom, and you can kind of pull, but you can also just sort of, use the point, that helps, and just sort of tap it down and ease it in. And then as your needle comes along, just move this out of the way, because you don't want to hit this with your needle. That won't be a happy moment.
So would the bigger piece generally be on the top if you're going to scrunch it in?
Not
And if it's
necessarily.
on the bottom?
It's okay,
Okay.
either way.
Okay.
Yep, totally okay either way.
Thank you.
You bet. Some fabrics have a little more give to them than others. They're a better quality fabric, they're a lesser quality fabric, they're a different, maybe they have some other fabric other than cotton in them. The weave is intentionally tighter or looser. It may be also that, I think we've talked about this in previous classes, that when you sew perpendicular to your selvage edge, you're going to have more give. When you sew parallel to your selvage edge, so if you're cutting a strip that's parallel, it's going to have less give. So that's going to be part of it too. And you know what? So there's a little pleat in the seam. I mean, I've seen some pleats because I've quilted some quilts for folks that are brand new, or, you know, that just wasn't an important thing for them. And when it's all quilted, that's not noticeable. Unless you're doing some sort of contest and having it inspected. And then it is. Okay, now, a signature quilt. Here is something I hope you all get an opportunity to do someday. I go to my stash and I get strips, and then instead of having 3 random, I'll put a light strip in the middle. Now, it's not necessarily going to be the same light color throughout, but it's going to be significantly lighter. It will be nearly a solid cream or white, or ever so slight a pattern. I might end up going to something like this little rosebud if I have to, or if the color scheme needs, is cool with the purple or something like that. But generally, this is about the most color I'd pull in to that center strip. Now, this then will get cut the width of the 3 strips. So our 3 strips, I got my board upside down, so our 3 strips are 6.5. So the strips are cut 2.5. So this is a jelly roll. This could be a jelly roll. So you buy them already cut, done. You've got your jelly roll cut. Sew your 3 strips together, the whole width, and then start chopping them up, boom, 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 6.5, 6.5. And then, don't sew them together yet. put them in a lovely basket with a lovely silk or cotton pretty scarf or something inside, and take them to the baby shower or the wedding or the whatever, of course with the person's permission and they want it, and have everyone there use a fine tip permanent marker, not this one. There's one that's finer tip than this, and I'm not finding mine, that's got a super fine tip, and you instruct everyone, you make a little sign maybe and set it at a table at a wedding, and you instruct everyone to sign their name, a greeting to the bride and groom or to the new parent or parents or whoever, and then you take them home and then you sew the quilt. And when you do that, you get something absolutely delightful. Google Photos, hang on. Oh shoot, where is it? I don't think I ended up with it. I couldn't figure out how to copy it. Oh, hang on. I thought I had them right there. Well, you end up with a pretty quilt. And so let's say it's a wedding and the bridal colors are blues, okay? You might have all kinds of blues in it. And so you'll have a whole bunch of strips. And think about it, a wedding might be 300 people. So you're gonna have to make a whole bunch of these. And so you might cut your width of fabric in half so you have more mix and match. You don't always have these two together in a whole bunch of blocks. So for a baby shower, you might want to actually pre-cut the strips even to 6.5 so that you can really mix and match a lot because you get more variety. This quilt, if I cut it up, it's gonna have these two paired together in like 7 blocks. So, okay. Which is fine really if you're doing 100 blocks, but, or more, 200. Shoot, I will try and take a second and find that quilt. It's really fun. Oh, I have another one. A 50th anniversary is a really sweet time to do that too. So, old-fashioned photos. Here we go. So I don't know if this is visible, but here it is. And so you have all the friends who came to the whatever anniversary it was of my in-laws, and they all signed on the white strip, and then I put it all together. So that's that one. Might have another one in here. Shoot, I thought I had that other one. The other thing I've done is I've left the center as I'm laying out the blocks. I've put an appliqued larger block in the very center, and the one I had was a tree and 2 bluebirds and hearts and the stuff like that. Anyway, this was for our soccer coach, and so I grouped 9. Let me also remind you too that when you put things together like this, make a block and check it. I had it in the wrong spin and it really looked like a swastika. And it was like, whoa, okay, need to do something different with that. That's not a good plan. Okay. This quilt here is using 2 strips, so you get the plus, but you also have a difference in size. So they are half the size in the center, I think, and then the outside I made them larger. So, and that made a fun variation. So it's not too boring with just the 2. Not on that one. That's not on the. Oh well.
Oh, they're on here.
They're on there.
So faint.
I can't. Yeah, I can't. You know, I take photos and go like this and go, what? I can't do that. That doesn't work. Oh shoot. Am I? Yeah. Okay. So this is a simpler 2-strip plus quilt, all the same size. So when I make a quilt, I cut a bunch and get going. This is a table runner of that same 2-strip quilt.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with that pattern. Every time I look at it, I'm like, what? Oh. Oh, yeah.
Right.
I know, the 2-strip doesn't do that, but the 3 does. The 3 ends up having an interesting appearance. Yeah, sometimes. Okay, let me move these over so I don't use them over again. All right, so a signature quilt is such a sweet thing to do. And the people who receive it, I have always had them absolutely delighted. And here they have this quilt that may be a lap size, it may be a full bed size, they're snuggling up in this, and every time they remember all the people that were at that event. So it's really sweet. And a baby shower that's maybe just 25 people, then make a smaller quilt, you know. And you can intersperse the signed ones with unsigned. And maybe there's somebody who couldn't make it and they can sign it later or something like that. So yeah, so it's one of the sweetest gifts and easy to make.
So what do you have them sign with?
An indelible marker, and I just have gone and bought the big set and put like a pretty basket with a drapey thing in it and put the blocks, and then have another basket with a drapey thing and it's empty, and then I put a little sheet that says please sign, and a sample that I've signed so they can see. You'd be amazed how many people sign on the wrong side, or they sign on the colored strips. I'm like, what? And
People don't want to follow the rules.
or they don't read them, and they just go for it. And anyway, so that's, and then a lot of times I will take it on myself to just sort of mingle and go, hey, have you signed a quilt block? They're over here, and make sure you sign a quilt block. And I even have taking a handful of them and dumping them in the middle of a table and passing out the pens and say, come on, let's get going, sign these. I can't make a quilt without them. And anyway, so that is just so sweet. And think about, like, maybe you use a pale yellow in the middle and you have pinks and greens are the colors or something like that. I mean, it can be as basic as some of them I showed you, and it can be as lovely and colorful as you want it to be. But the middle strip needs to at least have as little enough color that the writing will show up. Okay. So, strips, and another thing is what I call round the block. And around the block looks like, okay, here's that. Where did the finished one go? Here it is. Here it is. It's this. So it's the 2-strip rail, but guess what? It can be any number of strips. I saw a really cute pattern in a quilt magazine that was like sherbet colored, I think it was 4 strips. So it's a little trickier figuring out how long to make them, because you have to consider this size here. So again, make a block. Remember your seam allowance. So anything you measure, you're going to have to include that half inch actually seam allowance, because you have a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch both sides of the piece. And if you want more information about this, I'd be glad, or call me, I'd be glad to help you figure out whatever it is you're working on. But this one I saw in a quilt magazine was these pretty sherbet sunset-y colors, and then it went around, it might have been a black center. And it was really bold and strong. It was, and I think the name of it was something salsa or something like that. But anyway, some Caribbean name, and that's just a fun block to use. And I have, there's a picture in here that is an around the block, and this one here is down here is a skinny strip of white and a wider strip of color. So they've held a consistent strip with other colors. And I don't, here, go ahead and look at that. I just made 3, my printer went goofy and I couldn't make more, sorry. So I just have a few samples. So again, you can make 2 strips, you can make 3 like the signature block, you can do a variety of colors like these, and have those go around a block. But because these aren't butting up to each other, they're going to be longer. They're going to be the square that you have in the middle plus the width of the number of strips you're using. So there's a lot of variability in that, so I couldn't give you real specific instructions. But again, please contact me if you're working on something and you're like, I don't know how to figure this. Let me know. And when you do, when you do around the block, the very first piece is sewn to the square, but not all the way. You leave an unsewn part. Then the next, shoot, where'd it go? Okay, this may not be the right length, but because I may not have been cutting for that, sorry. Then the next one goes at the end of the square, and oh good, it's the right one. And it goes all the way to the end. And so then that opens up. Then the next one goes to the end of the square and across there. And then this last one goes to the end, and then the very last is to finish this. Does that make sense? So you leave a little gap, and this is like a pretend seam. And so now you have a full piece to sew, then you have another full piece, then you have another full piece, and then you go back and do that first one. Finish the first one. Okay. All right. So that's 2s and 3s. And around the block, now, rail fence, around the block, 2 strips. Now, stacked coins. Oh my gosh, stacked coins are so much fun. So they're also referred to as Chinese coins. I've heard them called. And what I do for Chinese coins or stacked coins is with little strips that I have, this could be a 3-rail fence, but I cut them a certain, well, sometimes I just grab and start sewing. And then, so then I'll sew these 2 and then another 2 or another 1 or another 4 or however many I have in my pile. And I'll get a long chain of these. So I have one right here. Oh, here. So I have like strips like this that are leftovers from heaven knows what. And the shortest strips are going to end up being my telltale width because that's the shortest one, and I'd have to take it out if it doesn't work. So then I end up with, I lay the full strip that's at the time is going to be, nope, that's not the same. So I'd have a long strip like this, and it'd be all uneven, zigzaggy on the outside because this one isn't the same size as that one. I'd figure out what my shortest one is. I'd lay it down on my cutting mat and zing, trim it off, zing, trim it off, and now I have a big piece to use. Then I'd make more, and then I'd figure out, now these 2 pieces happen to be in this one, so I'm not going to put them at that end. I'll put them here. So I'll sew those 2 together. Or I might do that because now they're spread apart and do them that way. So then I'd sew these together. Now, you get a nice long string of these, and then you put fabric strips in between them. And you have a column of several stacks. You have columns of several stacks of strips. and that's called stacked coins or Chinese coins. Again, if you look on Pinterest and you just Google, not Google, but or even Google stacked coin quilt, you'll find so many fun ideas. And you can see the colors are my scraps. They're not planned. I might, and I do, have a box of brighter fabrics, but look here, this one's pretty skimpy. So even though I had trimmed these, that one's going to dictate that this has to be trimmed off. So I'll have to trim that off a little bit and then add to it till you get the length you want. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can make them smaller, you can make them the length of the quilt. The possibilities are endless. So here's a nice long one that's ready. And my daughter-in-law made a quilt, her first quilt, and this was what we did. We sewed all these together. I think we cut like 5 columns and then figured out what width that was and put in enough distance between them to make a good size baby quilt or family quilt. I forget what size we made it, but anyway. So baby quilts are super fun to make because they're so darn fast, they're small. Now, guess what you can do? A rail fence. You can also take these and make a whole bunch of them so your center rail is strips. And actually on the class on Confident Stitch, the picture they used for today's was this, was a different fabric I think, but it was this style of quilt. You might have your rails different sizes. This might actually make a border for a quilt. So you would keep adding strips to this and then cut your white for the border. And so get the right length. We have these. Then when I make the outside borders for quilts and I have a piece left over, I leave them sewn together and I put them in this pile, which is not even nearly this organized at home. But, and then this one's skinnier than that, that's okay. If I feel I need to make them I can trim them 2 strips as easily as I can trim 1. So there's that. So this would be the start. And then I decide how wide a column I need, and I cut until I run out of one. Now, if I run out of this one but not these, I can tear that little teeny chunk off and just use these 2. So it's really fun. You just keep, oh, that works. Oh, we'll put it in there. Oh, we'll put it in there. It's like the what's the stone soup. You know, you just keep throwing more in and making your soup. When I have leftovers of things like this from a border, I put that in here because maybe that'll get cut and it'll work. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Yeah, so this is a little longer piece that I had left over. And now that, I mean, if I had a whole bunch of it, I could make a whole quilt out of those 3 strips. The bright inner one and the 2 black outers would make a fun quilt. So, so there's a whole bunch of things that you can do with your strips. And just to be clear, if anyone's going, well, so does she cut these that size? No. It starts out with this irregular chunk. And I just keep adding more fabrics to those 3 and more fabrics to those 4 and more fabrics to those 5. And then I go and cut this nice even-sized piece, trim it off on the sides, okay? And you can use any width of strip. They don't have to match. They can be different throughout the stacked coins. And And then we get to a fabric slab, a slab. And this, try and open this up. Okay. So so see these pieces over here? I had some that were that long, so I attached a few more, but I'll trim those off. Okay? And then this is like so. Now, it does help if you know you're going to be cutting squares. I know, it's kind of funny. If you know you're going to be cutting squares out, you can stagger them, step them, because one side is going to be at a 45-degree angle. I'll demonstrate that. And then you have even less waste, maybe. Maybe by this end you don't, it didn't matter. But anyway, so you have all that. Now these are all the super skinny 1-inch pieces. Sorry if it's PTSD. In our block of the month class, we made a whole bunch of little squares, little tiny 3.5-inch squares that had these. And then one might do the 1.5-inch strips. And so there's these. And you can see this is a little skinnier than the other one. That's okay. Doesn't matter. In fact, it really does work best if you mix up your widths, because if you're putting them together, sewing them together, because then nothing has to line up. Nothing has to match. Okay. So what do we do with this? What do we do with this? You can cut the slab kind of thing, slab stacked coins kind of thing. That would be an option. You can cut an actual shape. So you might have, oh, we're not there yet. So I want to make sure I don't cut this cord. That would be not nice. Okay, so if I were, I'm going to take this one for a slab. If I were going to cut or stack, if I were going to cut stack coins from this, is that visible without my computer in the way? I would have my ruler, which is somewhere very close by because I used it. Oh, right here. There it is. Okay. So I would have my ruler and I would set it down. I would find at least one spot where I can put it right on a seam and get it kind of square to the strips. So I have a 8-inch line here that's on a seam. I have an 11-inch line on a seam. I have a 2-inch line just off a seam, but I can see that it's parallel to a seam. And then I'd cut to take off all this loose, uneven stuff. My little ruler isn't long enough to go there, but anyway. So that would be, so that would have a nice straight edge. Then I'd figure out, okay, my, I'll fold this so it looks like that. Oh, I'll just do it. I'll just do it. What the heck? So close enough. Rotary cutter, thank you. And my lovely Vanna. Whack, and that might make you nervous going, oh no, sorry. That's okay. And then I'm just going to get my edge because my ruler's too short, but if you had a longer ruler, that would work very well. So now I have a straight edge. So then in my quilt, if I'm going to do stacked coins, I'm going to have a width for my column that I'm going to want to do. And so I'm going to set this down and say I want to do it, whatever this is, 5 inches. So now I will line up my ruler to give me 5 on this outside cut trimmed edge, and then here, move my ruler up if I have to, and keep it at 5 inches from the edge, and then I'd have a stacked coins. Okay, so does that feel clear? All right. We getting any questions or anything? We doing okay? All right, good. Now, here's another thing though. You can have a template like this. This came from a pattern. You can make one, but you can, if you have a diamond shape, you can set it down, but you want to think about, okay, how am I going to direct this? So I might have my my strips going across, or I might want them going up and down. So then when I cut the others, I might do all of them that way. I might alternate. That would be kind of cool if I was doing a star. I just thought of that. So, okay, that's fun. Now, I'm going to set this down here. Don't worry, it'll be fine. And notice my very bad cutting habit here. Don't cut like I say, cut like, or don't cut like I do, cut like I say. You should turn your cutting board and not do what I'm doing here. So I'm going to, but I don't want to lose, you want to do it in a way that doesn't shake up your pattern.
You don't have a rotating table?
I do at home. I do, actually. I made it. I just bought a Lazy Susan from a yard sale. So now I have this. And I'm going to go ahead and do traditional here. And I think there's a picture somewhere of a star that has, now I didn't put this right close to, I didn't put this very close because this is going to be the same pattern as this. I lined it up. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but it's okay. So now I can set this in here, and I can get a different set. But I need to make sure I cut all 4 sides, even though it looks like it's right on the edge. It might give me the wrong. I have a little bit that's going to trim off here. Oop. Turn your cutting board. Don't lose the place on your. Okay, now I have. Oh, maybe I have.
Why do you want to turn it?
Because you always want, I haven't taught a class on effective cutting, but so this table is too low. It's going to hurt my back after a while if I were to do this in my sewing room. So you want a table where your angle is right about 45 degrees here when your rotary cutter hits the surface. If you have it just a little lower than that, that's okay too, because then you can really kind of keep your weight over your arm. If it's too high, you're going to be doing this. So about waist height is a good height. And then you want your angle of your blade to be perpendicular, not twisted and cut, and not doing this, because you're not going to get a good clean cut. And then when you go to take it all away, as it has for me, it'll still be stuck, and you have to go back and trim that off. And it's less precise. So now I should get 4. So now I might make a star that is like so. And I would do 8 of them with this pattern. Oops, sorry. Okay, so that's one option for taking your slab of fabric. I could cut another one down here and get a real different set of fabrics. So the bigger your slab, the more variety you'll get. The other thing that you can do is you can oh, not with this, sorry, with this. So if you step it like that, you can set, so your ruler has these funny little angled lines, and this is what they're for. 45 degrees, 60 degrees, 30 degrees. And then you have these others going in the other direction too. So you can use whichever one works. So if I'm going to do 45 degrees, I can set this to get the most out of the pieces I have. So my smallest, my closest corner has to be my guide. So I'm going to go like that and get a nice 45-degree line. And let's say I need 4-inch squares. So now on this 45-degree line, I'm going to line up my 4-inch line. So I'm looking through at 4. And I'm going to cut like that. And now I'm going to go on the cut lines and do a perpendicular. Okay, boom. Okay, if this is making you anxious, just breathe. Oh, it's just like our block of the month. And then I go 4 inches, and check that. Now I have this. And if I do it all over this, and which I'll just go ahead. Oops, wrong side. Okay. So 4, I line up my 4-inch cut here. If I have a longer ruler, it would help me get to the end better, but I'm going to be really careful here.
So even doing that, it doesn't matter if your strips are different widths?
No.
Because you have so many different widths.
That's correct.
In your stash.
Yep, yep. And then I go to the spot over here that's going to be the skimpiest, trim that stuff off. And if you'll see, there's a little teeny chink there. That's okay because it'll be in the seam allowance. Oh, and when I sew my strips, I do press. All right, so here's another one. And so now we can do that. Yeah. And then, let's see if we have a couple more we can pull from. And that. And another one.
Is that what you mean by the chevron?
No, this is actually string piecing. So notice here my ruler cut runs out of room, but not here. So up here, I'll be able to pull, I'll get right on my cut line and 4 inches from there. So on this it's 7 and 3, which is 4 inches. Take that off. Take this off. Every once in a while you should check your 45-degree line and make, whoops, I didn't, that's a rectangle, that's not right. Funny. Boom. There. So now I have that one, and I'll put it in there. So now I have, this is the classic string quilt. Now, I could have taken this slab that I started with and cut one giant square out of it and put those, make a whole bunch more and sew them together in this same fashion. And I've made a number of quilts that way, and it is so fun. If you're going to do it with a group, you just tell people to make a bunch of string diagonal squares that are whatever size you decide. Then you bring them all together and put them together and take the potluck. You know, it's just super fun. Nice thing to do with a group. It also, like if you have a mutual friend who's ill and you want to do something, have everybody in your group make those blocks if they're quilters, sewers, and then get together and sew them together in a lap quilt. A little snuggly something to share. Okay, so slabs. Okay, now, then when you do sew slabs, you have leftovers. And what do we do with those? Well, same thing. So I might make some more to go with this. I might use this size and just take 3 strips and make some more triangles. So you don't have to cut the full square. You can just do the triangle and then it will make a square. So that's another option. You end up with these lovely chunks because they're the 45 length and then you didn't need all that. So you can cut those into the stacked coin columns. So there's a lot of fun things to do with the leftovers that pull from using this for squares. And that's all this. and you'll have pieces you can't use, like this. This is probably too small. Should have thrown that away. This would be a stack that I would start sewing. So it's all these strips. It's helpful to press them because they're skinny, unless they're really wide, and then I wouldn't bother. But or they're really wrinkled. But it's helpful to press them flat because they're skinny, and any little not lining things up quite right does make them kind of wobbly, which is okay. I'm not all that big on it, but I often say I don't press, but I do that. Okay, we have just a little bit of time. Okay, now I'm going to show you a really fun thing. I have not ever made one of these blocks, and so this class got me, I know what I'm going to do to show them. This is so much fun. So, you choose a color. Now you could choose this green. I know, it's so fun. Watch. Watch. And this one's not trimmed, so I'll show you more. But look how it's going together. So you choose a color. In this case, I had this green, so I used it. But it's fun to use something like what I call men's pajamas. So something that has a kind of funky little print in it, but it does read fairly solid. And so if you have that in here, you know, I might use other colors so they showed up brighter, but that would be kind of fun. Red is absolutely stunning. Black is stunning. Gold is stunning. It doesn't have to be solid. It can be a print that reads solid. Too much busy is probably not great unless your strips are going to be solid, in which case that will help settle down the busy print.
What's this called again?
This is string piecing with foundation.
Okay.
And this shape in the middle is called a kite.
Okay.
And so I honestly don't know what the name of the block is, but I know that it is, I mean, I've seen quilts in person that are absolutely amazing. And then I've known people to make them. If you're in the Quilt Guild, Debbie Gross is, I pale to her knowledge in strings and strips. She's just an expert of, yeah, we can use that, and she saves everything. But what you're going to do is you're going to start with a pile of strings and strips that you've cut. Small is okay because as you get out to these little pieces, you don't need much. And what you do is you take, so to start with, you have your square, and you take a fine tip permanent marker, which I think I forgot. So I will use my not so fine tip. Okay, I don't know where that one went. Yeah, here it is. Okay. And what you're going to do is just decide. There isn't a recipe for it. I chose a 3-inch from one corner. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to mark it there. 1, 2, 3. Mark it there. And then here, I'm going to take my quilting square, and I cut these 7 inches. I'm going to slide it over a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to slide it down a 1/4 inch. Sorry, I did it. I had it marked already. Okay, down a 1/4 inch and over a 1/4 inch. And then that's going to give me the 1/4 inch seam here. And I'm just going to make a dot right where that intersection is opposite these two. So on that angle. Now, using this wider thing might not be the greatest. It might show. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to connect those 2 dots. Take this. Connect those 2 dots. Now I have that kite shape, okay? So it's this shape. Then I'm going to fold. Well, you know, this is how I did it at home, and then I kept going, I don't think I have to do this step. No, I don't think you do. So then I take my pile of strips. Here are some. I'm going to take that one because it's long, because you have to start with your longest. And I know why. Yes. Okay. When you use the wider tip, you can actually see through. But if you don't, you just fold on your drawn line and finger press, or go to the ironing board and press that, and you can see it. And then you set your strip down. It doesn't have to be perfect, but so that it's in the kite mostly, but it's a 1/4 inch over the line. Then you go to your machine, you sew here, and then you come over here, and it's all sewn down, and you fold it over. And it's going to be right on that line or close enough. Then you sew another strip that's long enough. So you're going to have to play with something long enough, not quite. How about that one? That one will be. Notice those 2 colors are not 2 colors I'd put in a quilt by intention, but it's fine. And I'm going to set that down to be on the edge of this fabric. And so now on this side, and I'm going to sew it down. Then I'm going to take another one and do that.
You're sewing through the green square.
Yes, you're sewing through the green square. So then you end up with this. And so see how the square is made for you on the back for trimming. You want to double check that it's still 7 inches because it does kind of get eaten up a little bit with the sewing. So now I'm going to take my ruler. And I hope this is clear to those of you watching. Again, please feel welcome to call me, contact me, email me, whatever. And I'll be glad to try to walk you through. Now, it's going to seem weird because there's no strips out here on this corner.
When a quilter goes to quilt that, is that, I mean, so you've got double thickness plus batting plus backing. Is that at all a problem? Does that
Shouldn't
change
be.
the thread that you have to use as a quilter?
It doesn't
or-
to me,
Okay.
but I'm not, I don't know. That's all I can ever say is to me, no. So now you have this, okay? And the blocks that go, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
the blocks that are going to build around here are going to also show this pattern of that. And these are going to make a diamond. I mean, it's just the coolest. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. So this is foundation piecing, because you have this green square to start you off. And yes, for quilting, you will have some thickness where these strips are sewn. If that is a problem for some reason, you can maybe sew this number of strips and have a template to cut that out and sew them together that way. That's another way to do it. But this is way too easy. I wouldn't bother with that. So super fun. And this kite can be as narrow or as wide as you want it to be. The square can be as small or as big as you want it to be. It's your decision. It's just fun. So let me go back. So you have your drawing on your one side. You press or finger press or iron press on that line. And the reason for that is then when you open this up, you can get a ballpark idea where it is. I wasn't demonstrating because I wasn't sure I'd have time, but I will now. Then you take it over here, just so this is clear. Take it to your machine. Oh my, it blew all over. Yes, it does. And I hold it up to the light and kind of make sure that I can see the shadow of the fabric behind my line so that I know I have a 1/4 inch on this side of the line. Close enough, not perfection. Set this down on my drawn line, and my drawn line will be my sewing guide. There. And you can look down here at the end and see that your fabric's about a 1/4 inch beyond that. That's good. You don't want to pull and tug anything. You're not you've got an angle here and a straight edge here. You don't want to do any pulling and tugging. You're just leaving them gently sitting along that. Okay? Now I go, so this is my drawn side. Now I go back to my not drawn side, fold that over, and you can finger press or iron press or not press, whatever. It is a good idea, I think, to do something, finger press, I'll say. And and I'm just thinking I want a skinnier piece there, but I don't know if I have a big enough one. Yeah, I do. Okay. So now I'm going to set this here and go down to there. And there, it's on top, so it's on the not drawn side. So that first strip, you're sewing on the drawn side. After that, you're on the other side. So it's not quite like paper piecing. Oop, something happened there. Okay. And now I have strip number 2. Okay, and I keep going out. Then I do the same thing I did here, I do on that side. So I'll sew my first strip on the drawn side and then all the other strips on the not drawn side. And then it'll move out, okay? So this is just a super, this shape is, I've often heard it referred to as pine burr, B-U-R-R, pine burr, but it's usually because there's a zigzaggy sawtooth on the edge of it. So I don't think this is pine burr, but anyway. But you, like I said, you can mark your lines here and have it be a skinny little kite or wider. And obviously, the bigger the kite, the less strips will be part of it. So that's that. Let me see if there's any other big deals I needed to share. Oh, yes. Got that. I'll just pass these around. These are just fun strip quilts. So this one here is, I'll let, this one, I know, I remember making that one. I can't think who it was for. This is so simple. It's just a little heart in a frame, and then piano keys, which is what that border's called. So it's like the stacked coins. It's piano keys. This is a more artistic quilt that is slabs of strips that ended up making the mountains. And with a specific choice of colors, of course. This was, these were my first strip quilts. And I have twin nieces, Amy and Jenny, and that was their high school graduation. And they said pink and green. And so that was my interpretation of pink and green. This is just a baby quilt, and it's just in a 9-patch format. So you've just made 9 squares, and I think there's 5 strips in each square. So it's super easy. Oh, I know. And this is light and shadow. I have it listed on your list, and it's where you take a square, you sew a strip down the middle, and then start building only on one side. And so you have this like a kite is showing through. It's the half square of the triangle, the half triangle in the square. No, that's half square triangle. There we go. And so this is that quilt. I haven't shown anything with irregular width strips, but you can use very playfully strips that are wider at one end and skinnier at the other. And those are lots of fun. That's a beautiful quilt. This one, if you see the wide column of strips, and then there's some kind of square in the middle and the columns. So that's another one. And then I also want to remind you there are 2 quilts we've already talked about, and one is the geese in the pond, which I have a picture of there in the corner. And then the other is doing 9-patch sashing. Ooh, that was a mouthful. Let me drop everything here. Here we go. So 9-patch, remember, is sets of strips that are light, dark, light, light, dark, light, and then a set of strips that's dark, light, dark. So you have your strip slab, and then you cut them up into strips again, and sew them together in the 9-patch. Then you have sashing that is to go in the opposite light and dark. You have dark, light, dark. And then a square of light, in this case, it could be the opposite. And, okay, where are we going to do this? We'll do it here. And then when you just do the 2-side thing, you set them down like that, and that, and, whoops, I did that wrong. There we go. No, yeah. And that. Now, if I made a bigger quilt, I'd have more variety, and so I wouldn't get 2 of those next to each other. But then you build out, and you just get your whole quilt that way. And along the outside edge of your quilt, you're going to have to do this side and that side, just with sets of the 9 patches and the little strips because of the way this is constructed. So strips again, just slabs of strips and cutting them up. So you're taking beautiful fabric, cutting it into strips, sewing them together, cutting that up, and maybe cutting again. Who knows? So, and one other, and that is the checkerboard. Another potential, just alert, another potential stressor. For those of you who took my class in the block of the month. Nope, that's not it. Where is it? Here, okay. So last time I showed the lover's knot. Lover's knot is the same kind of thing. So we have our, this is before checkerboard, sorry, I jumped ship. So you have multiple strip sets that are the same. You put them together, same colors touching each other, seams going in opposite directions, and then you cut a square. However wide it is, you cut that square. And then draw the line diagonally, and you end up with this. So the other thing is if you have slabs like this, you can, this is going to be a tricky concept, I'm sorry, but let's say we make them 8, all right, 8 all sewn together. And then you take that whole thing and you sew it again so it's in a tube. And then you set it down and you cut it into whatever wide your strips are. So you cut all the way across. Then you move it 1 notch and unsew, and move it 1 notch and unsew, and you get this diagonal of pieces. It's basically a bargello of sorts, but it's not as complicated as bargello. So that's another strip technique. And then, I'm not finding my checkerboards. So these are my boxes of 1-inch strips, and my bag here. Let's see if I can reach that. Yep. And oh, there they are. And my bag of 1.5-inch strips. They're just piled in a mess. And then this is what you can do when you cut a set of them, and you cut skinny and then sew them together so they're a checkerboard. No real rhyme or reason for it. And this is when you start mixing up the sizes a little bit. So strip piecing can create squares, it can create strips, it can do around the block, you can do a 9-patch with sashing, but the concept is that we're sewing strips together so that it makes it easier to cut something else. So the diamond shape for the star or whatever. And just a lot of fun. This was from the Block of the Month class. And so you can see these were made the same way I demonstrated. And they're just going in the corners of. So that these strips can be the block, or they can be part of the block. So you can have something kind of wild like that one. Believe it or not, these all go in the same quilt. And so there's those. And then I have a pattern to share with you. It's super easy. It's the stacked coins combined with rail fence. And so feel welcome to take one of these. Okay? Yeah. And that's all, folks.
When you're pressing like the checkerboard square, you know how the lover's knot, you want to press them in different directions?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing that for the
Yes,
checkerboard?
and I can let you take a peek at that. Where did they go? Did you see where I... Maybe. Yes. Here they are. Thanks. Crash, bang, boom. So what you do is you're not stacking them to cut like the lover's knot. So what I do is I just press my slab all in one direction.
Okay.
Then when I'm going to do this, I cut them up. And let's say I have and these checkerboards to match up have to be the same size strips. Okay. So these are all the 1.5 inch. So my 1.5 inch strips, I'm cutting the assembly of them in the slab 1.5. And I want it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares across, I decided. Could be 8, it could be 20. Could be 3. And so every 6, I'm going to just unsew them with a stitch ripper. And then I'll have batches of these columns. And when I sew them together, I either put them so that the seams do go in opposite directions so they'll nest, so they're already pressed, or if I just don't want it in that direction for some reason, then I'm going to put it down and I'm going to force one of them to go the other way. And then when I press the whole block afterwards, it'll get laid flat.
Cool.
But you can take a peek at that and see how it goes. But when they nest and you sew, it helps you get those corners together so nicely in your sewing. The pictures I've included in the handout there, or to look at during class, you can see that there's just a ton of ways to combine strips, and some are kind of strong images, some of them are more delicate. It just depends what you're doing. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fun. Wow, every time I end like this.